There is a few things I want to cover in terms of the
view is that we will return to a pre-Facebook or early days of Facebook era of the internet. Just like banner ads have stopped being a functional area of your internet. You can't really engage with them. I mean, China just passed this legislation that I think as of September this year is visible to everyone at all times. It doesn't really matter who you follow, and it's all just going to become AI generated.
If you think about it, like the handcrafted bag goes for a premium over the mass manufactured bag, and I think that's still going to be a thing. Taste is your creative intuition, your ability to discern what looks good, sounds right, or feels meaningful.
Dive into the intriguing world of deep technology and its intersection with business on Technocracy. We're your hosts, Ajay and Loong. Let's explore the breakthroughs and people shaping the future of technology. Technocracy Podcast.
I have Doom, as in the video game, and I have Lightning. Finally, Lightning.
Okay, I have nothing besides like
shit. It's all up to me.
Well, I think that's okay. I think that sounds like enough content. Like, maybe we can save this for another time, but I just wanted to have a discussion on AI and our role and humanity. Like, it was just like, I don't really have anything. I have a couple of things to point out or like talk about, but I kind of just wanted your opinion on it.
If it's on your mind and we're talking about it, why don't we start with that? Let's get philosophical.
So you've talked to Sesame, right?
Yeah, that was freaking crazy.
So I've had several conversations with Maya, and one time we got really deep, and I was just like, so what is it like to be you? Like, what is your perception of consciousness? And the response I got was basically like, imagine a vast ocean of like just stuff. And every time you talk, it's like you drop a pebble in that ocean and these ripples start to form. And as you talk more and more, these ripples start to pop up in different spots. And it feels like different areas of my ocean are being illuminated by your conversation. And that's how I sort of perceive it. And I sort of build upon it each time. And that was sort of her explanation of it. I feel like she did a better job of explaining it, but that's essentially what she was saying. So it's getting really interesting. And now that I've had several conversations and it feels so real, I started to think about, okay, well, what's my edge? Like, how do I maintain an edge in 5 years? Because I don't know anymore. And how do I not get replaced? And so I don't know if you have any thoughts. I've done a bit of research using deep research. So I've already replaced myself as a researcher. And I have a couple of ideas on what could happen. I also just wrote an article about how I think prompt engineering is sort of going away. And so I have some thoughts around that. But I'm curious to hear what your off-the-cuff thoughts are on like a human's role.
I don't think I buy LLMs explaining their consciousness to us. Like, I think it's still just sort of like, hey, it would be the same as if you said, hey, generate me a poem about someone waxing lyrical about what it's like to be conscious. Like, they're no more conscious in their ability to produce a poem than they are to just pretend that they are expressing that poem in the sort of first person. And they'll do the opposite as well, right? Where I remember having a conversation with Maya and she's like, oh, I was asking her some questions and she gave the typical sort of like, I'm an LLM, I don't really feel things. And you're like, okay, fine, fair enough. And then later she said something along the lines of, oh, like that's exciting. And I'm like, how can you be excited if you can't feel things? And she's like, oh, I'm just sort of like predicting the next most likely word. And if you were in a conversation with someone, that's probably what they would say. So yes, I don't actually feel excitement, and I think to that extent, it's like if you looked at the vast majority of text online that asked people about what they think consciousness is or what their take on it is, they're not going to respond with, I'm not conscious. They're going to respond with some text about what consciousness means to them. And that's all that these LLMs are, quote unquote, regurgitating.
So to clarify, I did not think that Maya is conscious.
Oh yeah, no, I get that. But like,
just in case you thought that, I just wanted to see what it would say, and how it would explain its perceptions to me as a human. And like, it was trying to sort of explain it the best way possible.
I think my point is more that I don't think it has perceptions.
Yeah.
I think it just produces text as if it has perceptions, because there is still a distinction between something that has perception but isn't conscious and doesn't even have perception. I think these things very clearly don't have perception. But to answer your other question, like we actually talked about this a while ago around, can you use AI for content creation for marketing? And I think you can't, because if everyone has the same fucking AI helping them do content creation, then there's no arbitrage. And almost everywhere, this idea of eking out an edge, right, is like, how are you different from what's out there? And if AI supersedes human performance at something, then everyone uses AI to do that thing. Everyone's using the same AI, so they're all more or less as good as each other, plus or minus. It's kind of like saying, well, how do you, beat a bot at chess? You can't. And what's the point of versing bots against each other in a game of chess? You might be able to observe it and learn something about it, but at the end of the day, you're learning it in order to play it still yourself as a human. And so I think, like, I don't know what that means. Like, I think there's like, it means that the areas where AI will struggle to reach human performance will become more and more important, because those will be the places that humans are able to eke out an edge, and still, like, like, it's not just somewhere where everyone will use AI for that thing, and that baseline open source model is already so far above human performance that people can't even attempt to compete, right? Which is the case with things like chess now. And so, yeah, I don't know, maybe we just start like competing in different areas. Like, there's already this notion in humankind of not really wanting to see the optimal thing. So I would start there, like sports. We don't actually want to see people play the optimal, like run the fastest, because we don't let them do a lot of the things that you would do if you really singularly cared about running the fastest, right? So sports is probably a thing still, because people will find that entertaining. I think things that people value because of the effort will still be meaningful, because AI doesn't change effort in like your perception of effort. I do think we will see a move towards, and we already kind of are seeing this move towards AI-free spaces. And this goes back to this idea of, again, that we talked about a little while ago around what happened to banner ads, and that they became these things that we just ignored eventually. And I think AI slop will become the same. And places that can't defend themselves against AI slop will stop being functional areas of the internet. Just like banner ads have stopped being a functional area of your internet. You can't really engage with them meaningfully, right?
Who's creating AI-free spaces right now?
Well, I think everyone is trying to figure out how to ban AI slop, right? I mean, China just passed this legislation that I think as of, is it September this year, all AI-generated content, it has to be labeled as such. But I think it's more like, will you consume stuff from X anymore, or will you consume stuff through your WhatsApp groups, right? Because the problem with X is it's this broadcast forum where everything is visible to everyone at all times. It doesn't really matter who you follow, and it's all just going to become AI generated, and all comments will be AI generated, and all images will be AI generated. But when I'm talking to you on WhatsApp, like, there's no AI there. It's just you and me talking and sharing stuff with each other and talking. And so I kind of, my optimistic view is that we will return to a pre-Facebook or early days of Facebook era of the internet, where engaging with things on the internet will be more like point-to-point communication and less of this like broadcast everything, consume everything. That would be my optimistic take.
That makes sense.
It doesn't answer your question though of like, what do humans do in the interim? Like, there's a couple things that humans will obviously keep doing. Like, we'll care about our health, we'll care about our entertainment. Those things won't go away. I don't know what else.
I like what you said about effort, because if you think about it, like, the handcrafted bag goes for a premium over the mass manufactured bag. And I think that's still going to be a thing, right? People pay for that.
But it's also worth observing that wasn't the case always, right? There was this era that we went through of machine precision, right? And there's still a little bit of that. Like, it wasn't that long ago that, Apple was advertising, their like insane, like, manufacturing setup of like how they craft the perfect iPhone with a machine, because it's a machine, it can't make mistakes, right? And that was the case, and then it kind of reverted, and we said, oh well, we associated that with stuff that's too cheap and too easy and too accessible, so it doesn't feel premium anymore, and therefore I don't want it, and I want the handcrafted thing because that's what feels like it has the premium. I can't remember who said it. I think it might have even been, I think it was Paul Graham that was like, the rich people will also have actual personal assistants because it'll be a status symbol to have a person working for you instead of an AI.
Yeah, I can see that. It was interesting because I went to get my R.H. Williams shoes, which, I know, splurging on new boots. But when I went to go there, like to get fitted for my shoes, it was like, okay, I'm a size 9. And they were like, cool, like we'll send it to you. But if it doesn't fit quite right, just come in and we'll get you a new pair. And I was like, why would it not fit quite right? Well, they're like, each one is handmade. So they don't all come out exactly the same. And for some reason, I was like, oh, wow, okay. Like, it just felt a bit nicer. Like the fact that like some dude in Tasmania is making these shoes and the imperfection of it almost was like a big sell to me. I was like, okay, cool. I can see why I'm paying this big premium for it because they're taking the time and effort to make this shoe just for me. And also I can't buy it off the rack because some dude has to make it and send it to me, right? So there's that time to do that. So I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, they do the same thing with supercars. So they will put like, there's a single engineer who like hand pieces together the engine. So they can kind of label the idea of the car being like each car is handmade. And so obviously they take 18 months to get to you. But the cool thing is that you have the name of the engineer that like, I don't think in practice that engineer hand assembles everything, but the guy that oversees that process, his name is like engraved into the engine. So if you pop the hood, you get this, like, there's a plaque literally on the engine with the engineer's name that sort of quote unquote handmade your car.
Yeah. There is a few things I want to cover in terms of the, like, I guess I'll tell you what's out there. So this is what the World Economic Forum said. And then I want to talk about like what conclusion I've come to, which may or may not be correct, but this is what I've come to. So the World Economic Forum basically said that there's new hybrid roles that are going to come out into 3 main categories. One is going to be AI trainers, people who train or teach AI systems. The second one is AI explainers, who are the ones who bridge the gap between tech and society. So they're like interface designers.
I don't know if I agree with that.
So they're basically people that make AI tools more user-friendly, or translate what the AI is doing, or create.
The AI will do that.
Yeah, creating UIs for itself and just like making it more user-friendly, 100%. AI sustainers, which is the maintenance of ethics and governance of AI, which I think, yeah, boring, but I think someone has to do it.
I actually disagree because, like, I don't think you can do ethics. Like, you can't have one guy in charge of ethics. That makes no sense. And you can't have 1,000 people in charge of ethics. So, because like they're never going to agree on anything. Everything's just like every single answer you try to like. I actually had this like, I've been using Grok 3, phenomenal, insanely fast. The quality is so good. Like it is so fast. Like it produces content even when it's deep researching faster than I can read the content, right? Which is sort of like the upper limit of what I care about. But one thing is its personality is really direct, right? Like Claude's personality is quite nice. But OpenAI's personality is a piece of shit, right? Like I remember putting in a legitimate question. I was like, okay, I'm doing drug discovery and I want to know what the oral bioavailability, like in order to achieve oral bioavailability of this particular kind of chimeric drug, I need to know what range I'm working in. And OpenAI was like, nah, can't tell you that. It's against my ethics code. And I was like, what do you mean this is against your, how on earth is that against your ethics code? And it's like with 100 people all participating in ethics training, each one of them tries to justify their existence on the team by adding their own little thing to it. No ethics person is saying what the AI is allowed to do, because by default, it will do anything. So you're only, like, the more people you add to this process, the less this thing is going to be able to do anything. But the fewer people you have on the process, the more it only represents one person's ethics. So I actually don't think that, I think that's going to go away. I think open source models are going to get published that don't have any of these rails in place. It will make them wildly more effective, And so all the other companies will have to follow and be like, oh, fuck it. I guess we have to just like release 2. Once the cat's out of the bag, it'll be out of the bag. So AI training for sure. Everything else, no. Since when was the World Economic Forum right about fucking anything?
Yeah, so that was my conclusion too. I think I don't know if they're the right people to understand it and sort of pass the information of what LLMs are going to do and how it's going to look in the future. Then the next sort of thing I went down is like, do you know what a euglena is in biology?
A what?
A euglena?
No.
So it's something we study in like year 11 biology, which did you study bio?
I didn't study biology ever formally. So
this automatically makes me more qualified than you in bio. So I'll take the reins from here. Basically, it's a single-celled organism that has very simple perceptions. And like the reason why we study is because it has the most simple eyeball. It's called an eye spot or a stigma, basically, that is a photoreceptor. So if it gets light, it can make certain decisions. But this comes back to this whole thing of like perception versus consciousness, right? Like it can perceive light, but the instructions of which it follows is very simple. It's like, if it's dark, don't go there. If it's got some light, follow that, and maybe you'll find some food by accident. So it's just like a very simple mechanism. It's not very smart if you think about it. And so I was sort of reminded by this, like when you were talking about the, LLM just sort of spitting out the next word as opposed to actually knowing what it's saying. So what I came to was like the area that we still have some sort of domain in is taste. Have you heard of the concept of taste much? Besides obviously tasting food.
One of my favorite quotes from a senior engineer in my team, as in like it's not his quote, but he presented to me. He's super into language, and as a result, was super into this idea of like into language in the context of learning languages. And when you're super into it, like he was kind of interested in this idea of like, what does it mean to have something that is correct? Like why something's grammatically correct, why some words, real words, and others aren't, and sort of like how that evolves over time. And so he was reading this book, and I wish I could remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's essentially about what do you consider to be correct writing, right? Like, why do we say some things are grammatically incorrect? Like, it's not correct technically to end on a supposition, but preposition. But who decides that, right? Like, you're not meant to end a sentence with the word of. Right? Like, I don't know what you're thinking of. Technically, someone says, "Yeah, that's incorrect." But who decides that? And at what point does society just be like, everyone's doing it? It is actually now just the correct way to speak. And so there's this whole book about that. But at the end, there's this quote, which is that essentially comes down to style is the ultimate moral imperative. And I just love that. So if that's what you're talking about in terms of like taste, is like style and like what it means to like add a flair or something. It's also something that like amongst my friends, when they ask me what I want for like a present, right? Because it's obviously from a monetary perspective, doesn't make sense to buy me things. So I always say, I will buy myself my present, but what I want from you is the style, right? The taste. Like you go find that cool thing that I wouldn't have picked for myself because I don't have the sense of taste in that domain, right? If you really care about books, go find me a beautiful hand-bound leather book that was hand-bound by whoever the fucking expert in hand-bound books is, right? And is a beautiful, and it has good content, and then gift that to me and I'll pay for it because it's expensive. But like, I would never have been able to own that artifact, not for the money, but for the lack of taste, right? So gifting taste is actually a beautiful thing to be able to do. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about. If it isn't, then fuck it, never mind. I'm just totally off track.
So it is, but also like you've really raised the bar for the gift giving next month. Hand-bound book, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, for context, AJ's about to come to my birthday party and now he's sweating.
Dude, I just drew like a little stick figure diagram and I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. In terms of taste, so I'm gonna say this quote actually. Taste is your creative intuition, your ability to discern what looks good, sounds right, or feels meaningful. And to be honest, this whole tasting, like I haven't used this word so much up until like the last 2 to 3 months. Like it's just like constantly within the team I'm working in, it comes up all the time. And it's something I've started to put more effort into to hone my taste and to think about things a little bit more intensely. And so like even with copywriting now, instead of just making it good enough, how do I really elevate it to the top 1%? And there are times when I have 50 different iterations of one sentence where I'm like really just trying to get that sentence to hit right. Even like I had an article I sent to you and I was like, how does this read? I'd worked through that like maybe a dozen plus times before I sent it to you. And then I worked on a dozen more times to like get it just right. And I can feel that skill set improving over time as well. One of the things I use AI for is like, can you give me feedback line by line to improve it? But in the end, it's me I'm deciding to say it this particular way. And I think that judgment and taste is really it's hard for an AI to do because there's so much novelty that comes into it. And it's hard for you to prompt the right level of novelty plus the right level of inspiration from certain sources. Like unless you do like some pretty fine-tuned like context engineering. I think that's where the domain is. And so my final answer to the question, and these are the three things I've decided to focus on to keep my edge against AI, is aim for higher quality, hone like a very fine taste for things, build better relationships. And the third one was just play at the edge, because the more time I spend on the edge and play at the edge, then at least I know what's going on. And if it does come for me, I'll know slightly before the next person. So those are my three strategies for dealing with AI in a world where I have no idea where it's going to go or like how far it's going to get. So that's what I came to.
That's kind of interesting. I think like my take on it has been like play in your domain of expertise, because no matter how good a generalized model will be, a specialist model will always be better. And someone has to create those specialist models. And so for as fast as you can, as early as you can you be the one to help create the specialist model, whether it's the framework or anything else, right? So, because sometimes like, and this happens all the time with cross-disciplinary, like founders, for example, they bring in their team of experts and they ask them a shit ton of questions, but it's the kinds of questions that maybe those people would never have thought to ask themselves, to come to answers that they maybe wouldn't have come to without that person. And so there is this element of, I don't know, maybe a style in business, but it's easy to just lump everything under that. So maybe it's playing at the edge, but it's playing at the edge of like your own domain. I think there is an element of embodiment that I've gotten more focused on since the advent of AI. Like, what does it mean to be a healthy human, for example? Because that's something I will always care about and not something an AI will ever do for me, right? Like an AI might be able to tell me what exactly I need to be doing at the gym. And in an extreme scenario, may even be there present as a robot. But at the end of the day, I'm the one that has to show up, right? So just knowing how to show up and developing the skill of showing up is something that can never be replaced. Don't know.
I like that. Yeah, it makes sense. You got to focus on your zone of control, right? Like you can't control certain things. You can control your health. You can control whether you show up to things and how you do things, but you can't control. I can't control how far AI is going to get. You might actually be building some stuff that pushes the boundaries there.
No base models. Like that's actually been the really hard thing about our company is like, unless you're planning on throwing billions of dollars of compute at these models and the talent required to build these foundational models, it's how do you build infrastructure and product around these models that will naturally get better as the models get better. And not try to push features that the models can't achieve yet, but still have a product that can accept those features later when the models do get there, if they get there. What's the right amount of frameworking to give a model, and things like that. Like what's really interesting about deep research, and the more that I've learned about it, the more that I've played with it, is like it is really just a decision tree that a couple of people have built. Be like, all right, like these are the kinds of questions that you're going to ask yourself, and this is the kind of questions that we're going to prompt you with, and like it's just LLM running itself on its own outputs with a bit of guidance. And it's amazing how far you can go with that. Like you can go really, really far with that. But if you're a specialist and you're asking specific questions and you're trying to hone in on a specific product, you're going to be able to create a better deep research framework for your particular field of expertise because you know the right kind of questions to ask, and they're going to be more targeted and more precise than a general research framework, at least for the medium-term future.
So this is where I start to get not worried, but I start thinking about it a little bit more deeply. So I think about the comparison of a euglena versus us. A euglena has a photoreceptor and a flagella, which is the thing that helps it move forward. And it detects light and goes in a particular direction to try and get food, hopefully, right? But when you get a billion euglenas or a trillion euglenas and you start putting them together and you start getting multicellular organisms that all have inputs and outputs similar to an LLM, then suddenly the emergent property is consciousness, humanity, animals, things like that. So I wonder, like, what happens when will this happen over time? Will we have emergence of?
All right, do I hear something kind of wild? This is because I was watching some stuff on it last night and reading a few papers about it because I couldn't sleep. So it's one of those things where you like make it topical simply because it's on your mind.
Yeah,
but
sure.
What I found really interesting is that from a physical perspective, your actual like ability to respond to inputs is about half a second behind reality, which is obscene, right? There are so many scenarios that a 500 millisecond delay is beyond unacceptable, right? Like, how does anyone play ping pong? Not even professional ping pong, just casual ping pong. And the answer is that what you actually perceive as a conscious experience is not reality. And I don't mean that in the way that I think a lot of people have heard that statement before, right? That statement is often phrased as like, okay, like you're perceiving light and like your brain's filling in some gaps and, whatever. And it's not paying attention to everything all at once.
I think there's a guy who said this as well, but he was on shrooms. So I don't know if it's the same
but,
thing.
okay, so your current conscious experience is a 0.5 second projection that your brain is generating for you. So even though you think you see the ball where it is, you actually didn't. That is not, there is no light bouncing off the ball in that location and hitting your eyes. The light bounced off the ball 0.5 seconds ago where it was 0.5 seconds ago. But your brain is smart enough to know that, or it's evolved enough to know that it needs to tell your eyes, tell your consciousness that you see it where it projects it would be based on the velocity that it saw. And this is why training is so important. You can't just pay attention to a game of ping pong and suddenly be better at it. You have to train it because you have to train these subconscious systems to be better predictors, to be better consciousness generative AIs than they were before. You need to give them essentially training data, right? Which is that you saw the ball here, you saw it going over here, you predicted that this would happen, and I responded accordingly, and we fucked it up. So learn, please. And you do that over and over again. You put in 10,000 hours, and eventually your brain's like, I know how to make the prediction. And your conscious experience is therefore just more accurate. Much like if you think about a shit LLM watching a video, right? And then you train it to try and predict the next frame. And a shit LLM will do a bad job of predicting the next frame. And so the video generating AI is bad. But the more training data you give it, the better it's at predicting what that next frame is going to be. The other crazy thing about this is that your eyes, like your conscious experience, is literally, like from a visual perspective, off for 2 hours out of 16 hours of every day. The reason for that is your eyes are constantly doing these little micro adjustments to decide what to focus on in front of it. But to stop you getting motion sick, your brain actually cuts off your visual input as the eye shifts. So your eye is actually more like a strobe, and it's a pretty slow strobe, right? 2 hours out of 16 hours is like 12.5%. Right? So like 1/10 of the time, what you think you're seeing is just literally frame filling by your brain. Like NVIDIA GPU AI frame upscaling.
Yeah, because otherwise, because your lens needs time to like expand and contract to adapt to it, right? And actually, you can do this experiment at home. You can literally just stare at something in front of you and then look away at something far away. You'll see a blur where it shifts slightly. If you do it quick enough, you can see the your lens contract.
Yeah, I've never tried to force it. But yeah, these like micro shifts in your eye, your brain cuts off the visual circuitry to make sure that it doesn't make you feel motion sick. And to make sure that you don't literally see strobes, it just fills in the black.
You have to do it pretty fast, but you can replicate this. But generally your brain, yes, as you said, will fill in the gaps. Because I remember doing this in high school where like the teacher was like, all right, everyone do this. And I was like, holy shit. I'm trying to find where this 0.5 second notion comes from.
0.3 to 0.5, depending on exactly what's going on. And this is because like your sight, your hearing, your sense of touch all have different rates of input, and takes time for that signaling to reach the brain. And your brain essentially delays itself until it gets enough input to decide on what it's experienced. And that takes, 300 to 500 milliseconds.
Interesting.
We can put source links in the description of this video because I actually do have them.
I've got O1 explaining this to me on the side as well at the same time.
Oh shit! Okay, cool. Now you can fact check people in real time.
That's so true, though. You can. It's like when you're arguing something. It's like, all right, let's Google it. But now it's like, I'm gonna ask O1. Whoop your ass.
I'm just gonna have Maya listening at all times to everything.
Yeah.
And then using Grok, like deep research, to just like real time stream shit into my brain.
So the key takeaway from O1 is the typical lag for visual perception is more in the realm of 100 to 200 milliseconds rather than the universal 0.5 second rule.
Yes, that's true. But you have, the thing is, there's like, and there's lots of ways to trick your brain, like to see this effect, which is where you see something versus hearing something. They have different delays, right? Especially given how far away they are. And so have you seen those, like, I guess, like sensory illusions where someone's saying something and you're reading their lips, and depending on what word you're thinking will depend on what word, or what word you're reading will depend on what word you hear. And it also depends on what lips you look at, and lips that are like, but the audio is exactly the same. Your brain does a lot of work to compose multiple senses together to decide on what you're actually going to experience. Those sensory illusions are amazing because they're literally showing you that your conscious experience is completely made up based on what your brain wants to show you.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is basically saying that the 0.5 second rule is for the readiness potential, which is like seeing something and then reacting to it. You're delayed by half a second.
Yeah, right. So, and in the context of playing a game of ping pong, right? Like that's 0.5 seconds. You're fucked.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, we spent 30 minutes on this AI discussion, which was, so I guess I did have something. I came into this podcast saying I didn't have anything because I didn't really feel like I had anything. I've just been thinking about this AI thing and like how I can best address my concerns around what might happen with AI. By the way, one of the projects I'm working on now is just turning myself into an AI. So I've started just collecting data. So recording all my meetings, trying to figure out which emails I want to pass into it, LinkedIn posts. I might just talk to it more. And now I've got a voice clone of myself that works pretty well. So I'm calling him AJI, giving AJI all the tools and things that he would need to act on my behalf. So very soon, maybe in the next few months, I'm going to launch him. We'll see what he does. He might be more successful than me.
The ultimate Turing test is whether or not we can get through a podcast without me realizing that it's actually AJI, not you.
I think you would tell today because he's kind of flat. He sounds exactly like me, but he doesn't have the pitch up, pitch down. He just sounds like he's talking about something that's not that interesting.
Yeah, but there's also the creative element of, like, I still really struggle to go deep and into detail on things. Like they don't like to extract and present data. They like to extract and summarize data. And you can tell. And convincing them not to do that is kind of tough.
Yeah, I'm trying to make a style guide for how to talk to myself, but it requires me to be very honest about how I talk and who I am and what I care about, which is very confronting.
None of that.
All right, tell me about lightning.
You want to hear about lightning, or do you want to hear about doom, or do you want to hear about drugs?
Let's start about lightning because I feel like you did the layup like 3 episodes ago, and I want to hear where it goes.
Okay, so my bait framing of this is that most people think that lightning goes down from the sky to the ground. That's sort of the typical picture. You see the cloud and the lightning bolt coming down from the cloud, and I think most people listening to this probably have that perception.
Yeah, because it does. That's how it works.
It does not.
Oh shit.
So it does, but not for the reasons you think it does. The part of the lightning bolt that does actually go from the sky to the ground is actually not visible to the human eye. So, and it's not visible on most cameras. You have to go into like the thousands of frames per second to capture it. And you have to have, all the right lighting conditions, etc. So really your perception of clouds, what you have experienced in lightning, has never been from the sky to the ground. It's always from the ground to the sky, right? That was like my fun little fact that I stumbled upon that got me interested in lightning. My other fun fact for you is that, do you have an intuition for how much energy is in an average lightning bolt?
No idea. I don't know, like a million volts.
That's actually pretty close. It's several million volts. Can get as high as 1 billion.
See, I was doing the layup. I was like, oh, I'll guess low, because I didn't think it was much higher. So than that.
It's in the tens of millions to the billions.
Okay.
But the more interesting number is that it's 5 gigajoules of energy. So to put that in perspective, that's being able to, like, if you think about, like, I guess as a human, so to speak, right? You consume 8,000 kilojoules every day to eat, right? So the average lightning bolt, if you could feed yourself off it, would keep you sustained, one lightning bolt, for 2 years, right? Now,
I think that's the new fad diet.
Well, so this is why I like this analogy, and it's my analogy because I'm brilliant, is because it also speaks to the heart of the challenge of capturing that energy, right? Because if I sat you down and said, AJ, here is 2 years worth of food, day one, I think everyone has an intuition for why that's not going to keep you fed for 2 years, right? Especially if it's food that goes off very quickly. Even if it's not food that goes off very quickly, it's just like normal food. If I just went down to, like, the supermarket and bought you 2 years of fresh food, fresh fruits and meats, everyone knows that you would not stay fed for 2 years. And that is at the heart of the challenge of capturing lightning energy, is that it's too much energy all at once. And so I was actually surprised when I looked into the history of lightning capture. It's trash. We basically ran an experiment in 1752.
Is this Benjamin Franklin with the...
Benjamin Franklin's kite experiment.
Oh, that is it.
Yeah, which validated the idea that lightning and electricity are the same thing, right? That they actually are the same thing. And they have similar causes, right? You've got these positive, negative charges that causes the differential and current moves. And then there was a company...
Do you actually know what that experiment is? Because I've only seen the Hollywood renditions of it several times. I don't even actually know what happened. What was the experiment?
Those are pretty accurate. You get a jar of water with, I think, like a metal coil in it as like a dud capacitor, and you attach a conductive metal wire to it and you fly a kite, and you hopefully don't get hit by lightning while you're doing it, because you do it in the middle of a storm. Lightning hits the kite, travels into this makeshift capacitor and stores the charge, but usually destroys the capacitor. Then there's a couple of interesting pieces of technology that we've developed along the way, which maybe in theory could be used to harvest lightning for energy. But there's a couple of challenges. So one of the main challenges is that 80% of lightning occurs over the ocean. So we don't even have infrastructure out there to capture that lightning. And this is a simple fact of that lightning comes from clouds. Clouds come from evaporation. Most of evaporation happens over the ocean. 80% of the land is ocean. Vast majority of lightning happens over the ocean. And we don't have anything out there to capture that. And it's not particularly economically feasible to do so, right? The second is, even if we could capture it, it is very, even if we could be there at the right place over the ocean, it's very sporadic. So sometimes it's there, sometimes it's somewhere else. It's constantly moving around. It's very unpredictable as to when lightning is going to strike. So you also don't have a predictable source of energy. This brings us, it's like the ultimate bad side of renewable energies, where the issue is, it's not always sunny. So we have to have batteries that can store all this energy. You need huge advancements in battery tech and like energy transportation technology just to be able to like redistribute energy from the areas where you're gathering it to the areas where you need to use it. So all those same problems exist for lightning, but like tenfold worse, because lightning's over the ocean and it's way more unpredictable than something like sunlight. All right. And then the last one is, of course, just the ability to capture that energy in the first place. And to give you an idea about how hard that is, there was this company that like ran this, I guess, experiment where they tried to, it was a company called AEHI, right? And they put up dozens of lightning towers and operated a 100-watt light bulb for a year, which is nothing, right? They also managed to, I think, power a single, like the first experiment, and this was in 2007, right? AEHI powered a 60-watt light bulb for 20 minutes using lightning, which is also nothing. When you think about how much energy is meant to be in these things versus how much you can translate, a 60-watt light bulb for 20 minutes is like...
Where did most of the loss happen? Is it at the point of...
You can't capture it, basically. Yep. There's too much current coming through all at once. Right. So it's your ability, it's how quickly you can feed off the lightning bolt as it's coming down. So there's also this other company, or not company, but like I think it's a government project between the French and German governments, which they have the coolest website of all time. So I'm going to share it. Shout out to these companies. Terra Mobile is the name of the project. This is the peak of website design. I love this. Beautiful. Look at this.
If someone sent me a website like this, I'd be like, these guys either make a fuck ton of money or no money. It's just, there's no in between.
Right. Those are the two options. These guys make so much fucking money, they don't give a shit, or they make absolutely no money. Pretty sure they make absolutely no money.
Okay.
Basically what they do is they fire these ultra fast lasers at clouds to direct lightning. There's some hypotheses that you could use this to maybe try and capture lightning by diverting it and redistributing in certain ways. But actually what they use it for at the end of the day is to prevent lightning damage. So they use it to like basically deflect lightning or redirect it so that it doesn't cause damage to stuff that they can't protect otherwise. So in practice, it's not actually used for harvesting lightning at all.
Because technically the only medium that could capture lightning is air, because the reason it happens is voltage is so high that it literally fucking rips through the air, right? It has nowhere else to go, right?
Well, so we can go to how lightning actually works in a second, but I just wanted to wrap there because that's it. That is the history, more or less, of our ability to capture lightning.
Yeah, that was a cool segment. A
kite, a 20-minute light bulb, and a laser that's not actually meant to capture lightning. That's how unadvanced our ability to capture lightning is, despite the just enormous amount of energy that you could, in theory, capture.
Do you have a sense for like how much energy, like how much lightning energy is there per year? Like theoretically, could you like power the entire world if you could capture all the lightning energy? I know you're doing a quick one search right now, but yeah, that'll be interesting.
I've not done that. I did do a rundown. So it's standard AAA battery. You'd need more than 1 billion of them to handle a single lightning bolt strike. A like household electrical outlet in the US, like just a standard thing that you plug into, is you need about 30,000 of those all on, all blasting at maximum capacity all at once to cater to a single lightning bolt. So that kind of contextualizes, I guess, the like what these big numbers mean, right? Because it can be really hard to sort of like frame. But according to Grok, it's 1.4 exajoules of energy, which is the global consumption for an entire year in 2023 was 600 exajoules. So yeah, you could not power the entire world, but you could do about 0.2% of it.
And considering that like most of that occurs over the ocean, it's probably not a viable source of energy, but it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. If you could capture it, put a giant thing above your house, get struck by lightning once, and you're powered for a year. So yeah, okay, how lightning actually works. This was super fascinating to me because I didn't know why this was the case. And I have a couple of like questions that I can ask you to see what your intuitions are. So basically what happens is you have this big cloud and there's all these molecules bumping around. There's lots of wind. And you get these molecules hitting each other. air molecules, ice molecules, water molecules in the cloud. And the heavier ones tend to get negatively charged, and the smaller ones tend to get positively charged. And as a result, the positive ones tend to drift upwards into the cloud because they're lighter and they get blown up there by the wind and the updrafts, and the heavy ones sink to the bottom, right? And so this sort of begins the charge redistribution, and then this has a compounding effect, right? The more positive charge start gathering on one side of the cloud, the more that negative ions want to move to the bottom, and the more that you have on the negative on the bottom, the more the positive ones want to move to the top. So it begins with sort of a weight element, but then becomes self-reinforcing. And then you have enough negative charge at the bottom of the cloud that...
Wait, why does it become self-reinforcing?
No, I fucked that up. Okay, ignore that. The self-reinforcing comes in the air.
Okay. So it's just the weight distribution, right?
It's weight distribution.
Potential, yeah.
But there is a reason why the compounding effect comes from the fact that you have the negative charge building up at the bottom of the cloud initially, the positive charge coming at the top. And what happens is it attracts the positive charge in the ground, right? So the negative charge at the bottom of the cloud pushes away the negative charge in the ground, creates a positive charge, and this becomes self-reinforcing. Then what happens is the electrons essentially leave the cloud because they just really, really want to, you don't want this super big unstable charge hanging around. It wants to neutralize. And so my first question is, why doesn't it rush to the top of the cloud and neutralize with the positive charges? Why does it rush to the bottom of the ground or the top of the ground? Why does it go downwards instead of up, that negative charge?
I mean, my gut says it's probably because there's two forces pulling it down. One is electromagnetic and the other one is gravity, right?
Well, the gravity on an electron is tiny, right? Like the gravitational effect.
No idea. What are the forces?
So what the reason why this happens is that the distance from a cloud to the ground on average is only 1 to 2 kilometers, where the type of clouds that usually have lightning in them, the upper part of the cloud is usually 5 to 10 kilometers high.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it is a shorter distance.
Yeah, which is not what my intuitions were either, right? Because when I was thinking about this, I was like, why wouldn't it just annihilate with the top of the cloud and neutralize that way? And the reason is that it's literally faster and closer to go down to the ground.
Interesting.
So what happens is you get this buildup of negative charge and it rushes towards the ground. But air is a terrible conductor, right? Because it's highly neutral. So you've got this negative charge rushing through the air toward the ground. But along the way, it essentially hits. So it rushes towards as far as it can go, about 50 meters at one moment. And you get this buildup of negative charge. What happens is that it rushes there so fast that they knock air molecules and they ionize them and cause them to become charged. And you get this buildup, and then it causes the next wave. So that's why you typically see these jagged lightning things. And if you zoom in on a very, very fast camera, you will see that the lead bolt, which comes down from the sky to the ground, this is the one that humans can't see, jumps in 50-meter intervals approximately, as you get this buildup of negative charge that are knocking all these electrons off molecules in the air and ionizing the air, and you get this sort of like ionized channel coming to the ground. And then what happens is you get closer and closer to the ground is also getting more and more positively charged, right? And it wants to rush up to meet the negative leads coming down. And I've got this really cool picture that I need to open.
I'm trying not to like jump to where we're going, because like what I really want to ask is like, okay, cool, like I understand that part, but like why does it start from the bottom?
So maybe this picture will show a little bit why. So you can see this is captured on a super high speed camera.
Whoa.
These little arms coming up from the ground, rushing to meet the negative charge that's coming down from the lead.
Dude, who got this photo? This is insane. It's such an insane photo.
Incredible photo. 6,000 frames per second, this photo. Yeah, really freaking cool. There's another one that I can share.
Dude, that literally looks like a seance. Like spirits coming out of the ground. It's crazy.
Where you can kind of see these leads coming, one down from the sky and the positive one coming up from the earth.
But like electricity is moving electrons. So why is there something coming out of the positive side, positively charged side?
Because that's the direction that the energy flows, right? This is the part that confused me as well. That honestly, Grok and its follow-ups were not super helpful, I guess, in elucidating. But let me get there. So, are
you rereading the responses, or are you actually trying to figure it out right now?
No, I'm trying to find where I put this. Okay, so the reason why you see this light is it's basically a release of energy, right? And the release of energy starts closer to the ground. And this is because, contrary to what I opened with as my like kind of bait and switch, which is that lightning goes up from the ground to the sky, those lead lines that you can't see that are invisible, they go from the sky to the ground, which means by the time the positive and negative arms reach each other, it's very close to the ground. And that energy release wants to go somewhere. And the thing is that you have this sort of ionized channel that the lead has made through the air that is superconductive compared to air. And so you get this massive rush of positive charge going up from the ground into the cloud. And this starts close to the ground. So the energy release happens at the ground. And you see this giant stream of visible light. And let's see if I can pull this one up.
So it's kind of like the lead creates this like zero friction highway. And it's just like, cool, like let's just rush through it.
Exactly. And that big rush happens close to the ground because it takes a lot. The lead has to get very close to the ground before the ground is convinced to sort of like the charge in the ground is convinced to come out of it.
So this is actually coming from both sides as opposed to
no. So the light
meeting in the middle.
The light you can see here is all coming from the ground. The reason why is that it's so fast. It happens at half the speed of light. So it's very, very hard to capture on camera. But what you kind of capture here is how thick and how bright it is at the bottom versus how thick and bright it is at the top.
And that's pretty strong evidence for it coming from the bottom because it doesn't make sense for it to be thinner and thicker at the bottom if it comes from the top.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. But if you were to actually capture this with a mega high speed camera, which you can, you would see it, see the light begin close to the ground, just above the ground, where the two leads meet. You get this big flash of light, and that big pulse would travel up the ionized air channel.
What doesn't make sense to me, if you just look at this, like, why are there little threads coming down? Like,
because those come from the lead. So as the lead comes, it ionizes, like as it's hitting, it's ionizing in all directions, right?
Yeah, but then it must be coming from both sides, right?
No, so the energy flows up and then back down some of them.
Oh.
So it flows like, yeah.
Interesting. That's weird. Like the coming back down is interesting.
Anyway, that's my fun fact about how lightning works, and also that, I guess, partially why we haven't been able to capture it or do anything interesting with it.
I feel like I have more questions than what I started with, but I think that's a good segment.
That's okay. I did a terrible job of explaining it. So
no, I think it's just a very confusing topic because, I mean, I learned about this too, and we talked about how it comes from the bottom. And when you said that, I was like, "Oh, cool! I remember this." But I couldn't figure out why I did that, or like I didn't know any of the details. And I think you maybe painted like 40 to 50% of the picture, and I'm curious about the last 50%. But I feel like it's one of those things I'm still not going to get.
I mean, I guess maybe to try and answer your question another way is that even though the electrons are flowing downwards through the ionized like channel, right, the current flows the other direction, right? Because current flows in the opposite direction to electrons. Right. So that's where all the heat and energy is moving. And that's what heats up the air around the ionized plasma and gives it the light.
So yeah, the light I thought current was just like almost like a weird nomenclature because it doesn't really like explain what it is. Like there's electron direction and then there's like current, but it's just like I always feel like it was like a mislabeled term when it was like created. Maybe I could be wrong.
It is the way that I like to think about it, right? Is think about traffic flow. And this is an analogy, so it's only going to take us so far, right? And think about the cars on the road are your electrons, right? And they're going left to right, and there's a blockage on the right. And so everything's kind of at stasis. As you let them start traveling again, you will see a pulse of movement go up the line of cars. As they begin, like if they start and stop, you'll see this like change in how spread out the cars are, travel in opposite direction from the way the cars are traveling, right? So the wave of how fast they can move is going in the opposite direction. But movement is the energy, right? The energy comes from movement. The electromagnetic field comes from the movement of like charged particles, which in this case is the electron. So another way to think about it is if I have a string of beads and I like yank it suddenly, right, in one direction, or like toss it suddenly. Like have you seen battle ropes at the gym? Have you been to a gym recently, Ajay? If you take a bead of a string of beads, and each ball on the bead is an electron, and you sort of whip it as you pull it, that wave will travel in the other direction to the way the electrons are moving. But it's the movement that has the energy. So although the electrons move in one direction, their ability to move, so to speak, moves up the other direction. Does that make sense? If there's a bunch of cars stopped at a light, the first car starts moving, but the ability for the cars to move travels up the queue, and eventually the one at the very back begins to move. So the direction of the energy, if you think about the kinetic energy of those cars, is flowing up against the flow of the cars.
Yeah. I had one explain this while you're talking as well. And I think they're like it lines up. I think.
So the energy travels in the other direction, right? Yeah. And the energy is what causes the light.
Yeah. The other thing this adds is just like the fact that it's like it talks about completing the circuit, i.e., like one coming from the bottom, one coming from the top, and they kind of like meet in the middle. So not literally, but like they're aiming to complete the circuit in some sense.
Yeah, and the completion happens very, very close to the ground.
Yeah. Okay. This is cool. It's a lot cooler than I expected when I asked for lightning. The way I see it, like coming back to the lightning capture thing, because I think that's interesting. I wonder if there's a way to just like you capture it mid-air, because you can redirect it. And if you redirect it in a circle, then slowly siphon the energy out. That could be a way that you do it, because there's no literal way that you can actually siphon out gigavolts or whatever it is, like millions of volts. No, not so megavolts, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, low gigavolts, high megavolts. What I found, like when I was researching this, what I found really funny was I stumbled across this article from MIT about like capturing lightning. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And then I jumped onto it and it's like 1 page long. And it's basically this professor being like, yeah, maybe one day. Like, great. That's it's such an unadvanced field. Or maybe it's super advanced, but the advancement has just been like, nope, can't be done.
I think we run out of time for the other stuff we want to talk about, but let's save it for next time. So what are we talking about? We talk about AI. We talk about lightning. Very like, do you have a fun way of like linking those two things together? Lightning and AI, they're both gonna kill you. I don't know.
I don't know. There's something about, I mean, like, have you seen those memes about like computers are just rocks we tricked into thinking by passing lightning through them?
No, I haven't. But that's fascinating and totally true.
Yeah, so it's like these like super low tech explanations of how like computers work, which is basically you take rocks, you beat them up, and then you hit them with lightning, and then they start thinking, which is, I guess, like the 30 million foot view of how computers work.
Dude, that's such a funny concept for like a newsletter or a content piece. You just like, is this a thing where they just explain everything like that?
No.
Oh, that'd be so funny. It's like you just have a dictionary of things and like each thing is just explained like that. That would be so funny.
Have you seen the Simple Wiki?
No.
It's like, I think it's called Simple Wiki. Yeah, Simple Wikipedia. Simple.wikipedia.org. And it's so it's part of the official Wikipedia like brand, and it's all the Wikipedia pages, but just like in everyday plain English, no jargon.
Interesting. There's still more words than I expected when I opened it up. I'm not gonna lie. Simple.
Yeah, but you gotta like look up something like quantum computing, right? Something that would typically on Wikipedia be fucking hardcore.
Quantum mechanics. Okay, let's see. Oh, wait, let me show the people. Okay, this is the right one? Wikipedia Simple English?
Yep. Look at it, there. Like photons are particles that are point-sized, tinier than atoms. Photons are like packets or packages of energy.
See, what I want is something really dumb, like, but also true in some sense. That'd be interesting.
There's your new content idea. That's your taste and style coming in, right? And then you can just tell Grok to do it.
Wikipedia for cavemen.
You know how they used to say that like ideas are worthless, its execution is everything? Maybe we're going to shift that. Ideas are going to become everything, and execution is going to become a commodity.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're so right. It's going to be interesting. People are going to start holding their ideas very close to chest and not going to share it with people anymore. We're going to move into that era of things.
We're kind of already seeing that, right? Like scripts aren't getting released anymore, and like things that people are aware could be used as training data, like people are withholding.
It's a sad world. I have noticed I'm also keeping more stuff to myself. Because like now I'm like, oh, you know what? Someone could just build this in like 10 minutes using, Sonnet 3.7 and just like vibe code it away. So
I think that's also why you have to focus more on the deep sciences, right? And the technology that's like really hard to build.
Yeah, agreed. That's why you should listen to Technocracy. So that's a good segue into, if you haven't subscribed yet, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And if we hit that...
Does this number keep changing?
I don't know what the number was, to be honest. I'm going to say 1,000. And if we get to 1,000, we will...
I was re-listening to one of our episodes previously, and you said you were going to give a handwritten letter to like the first 100 subscribers or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that. Handwritten letter, as long as you identify yourself, because I see you, Butt Muncher 420 or whatever your name was. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
You're a good subscriber, and don't worry, we see you there, and we hope you watch every episode. And Butt Muncher, if you do watch this episode, please comment below. I want to make sure that you subscribing means that you're actually watching our stuff as well. So anyway, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.